Good evening, everyone. On behalf of TaskMed, I would like to welcome you all to Medcast, Insights into Healthcare, a learning initiative by TaskMed. Today, it's a great pleasure to have with us Dr. Anupam Jina, who is an interventional cardiologist and electrophysiologist at King's Hospital, Bhubaneswar, Odisha. We welcome you, sir. Sir, we look forward to hear from you on today's topic of discussion, Mixelotin, an unexplored antiarrhythmic drug. Over to you, Dr. Jina.
Thank you, madam. And there are few people, but thanks for joining. So let me just start. Okay. I hope my slides are visible.
Sir, they are visible from slide number 5.
Okay.
Yeah, it's perfect, sir.
So today we are going to discuss a little bit about Mexcilatin. Mexcilatin, as we know, is an antiarrhythmic drug, but the use of Mexcilatin is somewhat limited. Maybe because it's a highly specialized drug and needs some understanding of the arrhythmia, some understanding of the treatment modality and how to use it. So basically, it is not about the drug, it is about the disease that we are treating that we have to understand. And that's the reason that some of the times it's not very widely used, and rightly so, I would say, because there are few caveats that we should discuss while talking about Mexcilatin. Let's take the case of a 56-year-old female who presented with palpitation and breathlessness, and ECG showed wide QRS tachycardia. So here we see that there is a wide QRS tachycardia. There is LBBB configuration because the V1 is QS complex. There is some VA AV dissociation is there. As we see, intermittently some P waves are coming. Also, this is a very atypical pattern, and the QRS transition is occurring at V6. So it goes more in favor of a VT. It's a wide QRS tachycardia, LBBB, right axis deviation with AV dissociation. So patient was hemodynamically stable, and in some of the stable patients, we have an option for pharmacological cardioversion. So in this case, IV amiodarone bolus was given, and patient responded to pharmacological cardioversion, and sinus rhythm was restored. So treatment was amiodarone bolus followed by infusion, and echo showed LV systolic dysfunction with a dilated cardiomyopathy. Angiogram shows normal coronaries. Cardiac MRI showed biventricular inflammatory cardiomyopathy with extensive fibrosis, EF of around 30%. RVA function was also mildly impaired. So that means most likely there will be underlying viral myocarditis. So patient was started on other therapy like beta blockers and amiodarone. But these patients with LV dysfunction, with myocarditis, with underlying scars, they also have a tendency to develop recurrent arrhythmias. So in this case, again, patient developed wide QRS tachycardia, but the rate was this time little slower. So now we have RBBB morphology because V1 is positive here, and there is dissociation. Patient was diverted with lignocaine, but there are repeated VT episodes. So some of the episodes needed cardioversion, and medical therapy was given in the form of propranolol and oral amiodarone. So provisional diagnosis was myocarditis with pleomorphic VT with LV systolic dysfunction. However, as we see here that the QRS is prolonged. So once the end of the T wave comes, roughly once the end of the T wave comes at the midpoint of the RR interval, that means that the QT is significantly prolonged. So in this case, that is one of the side effects of amiodarone, chronic amiodarone therapy, QT prolongation. Recurrent slow ongoing VT, ventricular overdrive pacing is one option in such cases, because if we keep the heart rate on the higher sides, targeting between 100 to 120, then that sometimes suppresses the ventricular tachycardia. And thoracic epidural and anesthesia was also given. However, both attempts are futile. So severe sinus bradycardia was seen. So temporary pacing was put, and catheter ablation was considered. However, catheter ablation in presence of multiple VT morphologies it doesn't give the very ideal result actually, because it's difficult to target the sites. It is difficult to map those sites. I'm an electrophysiologist, so I know the problems while targeting a polymorphic VT, or not polymorphic, but multiple VT morphologies in this case. Patient underwent minimally invasive bilateral thoracic sympathectomy. However, VT was still going on, so mexiletine was added, and mexiletine was also added to low dose amiodarone. Over next 3 days, VT became infrequent, and after 48 hours of VT free period, dual chamber ICD was put. Of course, this patient who has so many episodes of VT needing cardioversion with LV dysfunction definitely is a candidate for ICD. I mean, there will be some controversy, some doubt about the timing of the ICD, because many of these authorities say that we should wait for at least 3 months for the underlying disease to improve. But then in this case, when the patient has multiple VT, multiple episodes needing DC cardioversion and multiple antiarrhythmic therapies, in those cases, the ICD is indicated. With atrial pacing at 70 per minute, optimal dose of amiodarone, beta blocker, and mexiletine could be given, and patient was discharged in a stable condition. So this falls under the category of VT storm. VT storm in patients without an ICD, VT storm is defined as 2 or more VT episodes within 24 hours. VT recurring soon after, that is within 5 minutes of termination, and sustained or non-sustained VT resulting in a total number of VT ectopic beats greater than sinus beats in a 24-hour period. So these are the standard definition of VT storm. And in patients with ICD, 3 or more appropriate therapies for ventricular tachycardia. Appropriate therapy does not necessarily mean shocks. It includes even anti-tachycardia pacing. However, this definition is not comprehensive, because a ICD, if we look into the programming of an ICD, ICD has a set limit for a heart rate. Suppose if I program the ICD at 150, then any episode of tachycardia that goes below 150, suppose there is a slow VT where the peak heart rate is less than 150, then the ICD will not pick up those arrhythmias. It will just discard those arrhythmias. So that is one of the drawbacks, that ICD, when the VT is slow, then ICD will not detect that. And VT that fails to terminate with appropriate ICD therapy and remain undetected by the patient, that is also one of the problems that can be missed. So clinical syndromes of electrical storm, and especially when there is a vulnerable anatomic substrate, so like substructural heart disease, scarring after myocardial infarction, is affected by triggering event like PVC or an electrolyte imbalance, even like hypokalemia, hypomagnesemia. So determining the cause of electrical storm is essential, because that is the first line of approach in managing the electrical storm, is to treat the reversible cause. A patient may be having multiple episodes of VT, but potassium is suppose 2.7, and a simple therapy like correction of serum potassium will cure the VT storm. So that's why it is essential that we should evaluate for the reversible causes and treat the reversible causes before going to the next steps. So VT morphologies are classified like monomorphic VT, polymorphic VT, torsades depon, and bidirectional VT. Monomorphic VT can be non-sustained, can be sustained, incessant, or VT storm. So far, CAD is the most common etiology associated with VT in structural heart disease, which accounts for almost 75% of the substrates. Other diseases like myocardial diseases, the dilated cardiomyopathy, HCM, ARVC, then inherited arrhythmia syndromes, long QT syndrome, Brugada, CPVT, early repolarization. Sometimes valvular heart disease like aortic stenosis, aortic regurgitation. So while evaluating a patient with VT, there are few things that we have to see. First is patient history, any prior history of structural heart disease, risk factors for structural heart disease. Very important, because while approaching a patient of VT, first thing we need to see is whether the patient has structural heart disease or no structural heart disease. Because a patient without structural heart disease is an idiopathic VT, and the approach to management of that VT is little different than a patient with structural heart disease. Because basically the patient with structural heart disease has a higher risk of sudden cardiac death than a patient with idiopathic VT, except the primary arrhythmia syndromes. Family history also, we should look into family history. Family history of sudden cardiac death, family history of structural heart disease, that will give us an indication of ARVC, Brugada syndrome, then long QT syndrome, and baseline evaluation like physical examination, ECG, electrocardiography, stress testing, coronary angiography, nuclear imaging, cardiac MRI, all those things should be done to evaluate for a complete evaluation of the patient. Abnormal basic evaluations, if it gives rise to structural heart disease, then cardiac MRI, CT, or coronary angiography. If no structural heart disease, then the patient falls into the category of idiopathic VT. And VT etiology, presentation with VT. First, we will discuss about structural heart disease because that is more common. Structural heart disease can be ischemic cardiomyopathy or non-ischemic cardiomyopathy. Ischemic cardiomyopathy basically means that there is presence of documented coronary artery disease. And ischemic cardiomyopathy is idiopathic DCM, ARVC, HCM, sarcoid, and Chagas disease. Because sarcoid and Chagas, they directly involve the myocardium, produce myocardial scars, and they also involve the conduction system, thereby predisposing to the development of the ventricular tachycardia. And structural normal heart, basically idiopathic VT or primary arrhythmic syndromes. Idiopathic VTs can arise from outflow tract, fascicular VT, papillary muscle VT, and arrhythmia syndromes include Brugada syndrome, long QT syndrome, short QT syndrome, and catecholaminergic polymorphic ventricular tachycardia, or simply saying CPVT. Management for VT, first line of therapy is medical management. First, we give drugs, then we can plan for ablation therapy and device therapy. In VT storm, the first and foremost step is correction of reversible causes: ischemia, electrolyte, and fluid overload. Early pharmacological sympathetic blockade like beta blockers, deep sedation, and general anesthesia, antiarrhythmic drugs, reprogramming of ICD to minimize shocks. Because as we know, in patients with structural heart disease, repeated shock can increase the mortality significantly. So a patient who is in VT storm, who is getting frequent shocks, we should try to program the ICD to minimize the shock and try to manage the patient little differently, like going for a cardiac sympathetic denervation. Then we should go for a deep intubation and general anesthesia or deep sedation. Then catheter ablation is another option in some of the patients with refractory VT storm. Catheter ablation is useful. Among the drugs, antiarrhythmic drugs are the first line of management, then ICD, catheter ablation, and sympathetic denervation. So antiarrhythmic drugs are divided into basically 4 classes of drugs. Class 1 is sodium channel blocker, and the 1A, rare, not very widely used. B is used IV therapy in lidocaine, and C is used plecanide. Then class 2 is class 1B is mexiletine. Mexiletine is the oral form of lidocaine. I mean, not oral form of lidocaine, but lidocaine only can be given IV, and this is the oral congener. Class 2 is beta blockers. Class 3 is potassium channel blockers like amiodarone, sotalol, dofetilide, and class 4 are diltiazem and verapamil. Other drugs like adenosine are a separate entity. Okay, and pharmacological characteristics, I think we can skip this. Sometimes it becomes too theoretical. And okay, so mexiletine is approved in ventricular arrhythmias, both the US FDA and in India also. It is indicated or approved for management of ventricular arrhythmias. And even sometimes in patients with very frequent and highly symptomatic PVCs or ectopic beats, mexiletine can be given to suppress the PVCs. The standard guidelines, like the guidelines published by the Heart Rhythm Society, recommend mexiletine in treatment of ventricular arrhythmias because mexiletine is amongst the recommended antiarrhythmic agent to prevent or treat ventricular arrhythmias. Mexiletine is structurally similar to lidocaine, but it is orally active and inhibits the inward sodium current, reducing the phase 0 of the depolarization. That's why, by that pathway, it limits the spontaneous depolarization and initiation of the cardiac impulse. And site of action is Purkinje fibers. Though ERP is decreased, it results in increase in ERP and the action potential duration ratio, so thereby reduces the excitability. In the EP properties, if we look into the EP properties of lidocaine, the minimal effect on cardiac impulse generation and propagation, so that's why it does not cause resting bradycardia. No development of second degree or third degree AV block because it does not act on the AV node. No prolongation of ventricular depolarization like QRS duration or QT interval prolongation is not there. And patients with pre-existing conduction defects, however, there can be depression in the sinus rate, prolongation of the sinus node recovery time, and decreased conduction velocity and increased effective refractory period of the intraventricular conduction system. So here we have an interesting finding as we see that, let us compare two drugs, two widely used drugs, that is amiodarone, then we'll see, look at flecainide and amoxicillin. Amiodarone reduces the sinus rate, increases the AV node refractory period. That's why it is effective in PSVTs also, because it increases AV node. That's why it is amiodarone is one of the most broad spectrum antiarrhythmic drug. QRS duration is increased, QT interval is significantly increased. Another drug that is available is sometimes we use another drug that is flecainide, so does not change the sinus rate. Very mild increase in AV node refractory period, mild increase in PR interval. However, QRS duration. So as we know that in flecainide toxicity, we can have a very wide QRS tachycardia, very bizarre and very wide. Sometimes the QRS duration even going up to 200 milliseconds. But if we look into mexiletine has minimal effect on the normal electrophysiological properties of the cardiac muscle and conduction system. Almost no effect on this SN node, no effect on the AV node. That's why it does not work in PSVT or atrial tachycardia. And there is minimal effect on the PR interval QRS prolongation. So also no significant hemodynamic effect. Small, usually not statistically significant decrease in cardiac output. That's why it can be given in patients with structural heart disease like LV systolic dysfunction. No significant inotropic effect. Again, very useful in patients with LV dysfunction or reduced ejection fraction. Blood pressure and pulse rate remain unchanged. And it is well absorbed, 50 to 60% bound to plasma protein with volume of distribution 5 to 7 liters per kg. Okay. So dosing and administration, this is important. Doses must be individualized on the basis of response and tolerance, both of which are dose related. Administration with food or antacid is recommended. Initiate with 20 mg every 8 hourly. When rapid control of arrhythmia is not essential. A patient who is hemodynamically stable, the frequency of arrhythmias is not very aggressive. In those cases, we can start with 200 mg TDS. And minimum of 2 to 3 days before dose adjustment is recommended. Before dose escalation. And doses may be adjusted in 50 or 100 mg increments upward or downward. So when rapid control of arrhythmia is essential, loading dose of 400 mg and after 8 hours 200 mg. And when rapid control is not essential, 200 mg TDS, then 300 mg can be increased to 400 mg. Contraindications, of course, cardiogenic shock, pre-existing AV, second or third degree AV blocks are contraindications. As a whole, mexiletine is very well tolerated, and some of the adverse effects like GI distress, lightheadedness, tremor, and coordination difficulties, more or less it is a very well tolerated drug. So summarizing, treatment of sustained monomorphic VT, first thing we should look after is whether the patient is stable or unstable. If they are unstable, then we go for a DC cardioversion, and then probably patient will need a advanced cardiorespiratory ACLS protocol. If the patient is stable, then get an ECG and consider the disease specific VT like structural heart disease. And if structural heart disease, we can go for cardioversion, procainamide, amiodarone, or mexiletine. If there is no structural heart disease, then usually it is a idiopathic VT, which is verapamil sensitive, or outflow tract VT, which is sensitive to beta blocker. And pharmacologic therapy is the treatment of choice. If it does not respond, then cardioversion, of course. So mexiletine is indicated in sustained ventricular arrhythmias, agent with moderate potency, agent with appreciable safety, safe in LV dysfunction, safe in QT prolongation. Reversible non-lethal side effects. Class 2 recommendation by the guidelines for the management of VT. So this is one drug which is exclusively useful for VT and frequent highly symptomatic PVCs. It can be used as an add-on drug to amiodarone, sotalol, or beta blockers in patients with ICD. Management of ventricular tachycardia involves three major modalities of treatment: medical management, device therapy, and ablation. Sometimes, in majority of the cases, hybrid approach is needed. Treatment of VT can be a challenge. And in structural heart disease and high-risk polymorphic VT, ICD is the first line because ICDs prevent sudden cardiac death. Catheter ablation considered early for recurrent symptomatic idiopathic VT, and second line therapy for VT in SHD, because idiopathic VT should not get an ICD unless the patient has a history of family history of sudden death, or the patient is proven to have a primary arrhythmia syndrome. In any idiopathic VT or in any VT with a normal echocardiography or normal underlying structurally normal heart, we have to think really hard before putting an ICD, because ICD is contraindicated in some of these cases, as idiopathic VTs can be managed or cured even in some cases by catheter ablation. Medical therapy is acceptable for minimally symptomatic idiopathic VT and low risk subgroups of PMVTs. Thank you so much.
I just want to request all the participants, if they have any question, kindly write down onto the chat box.
So I can see many attendees actually. When we started,
Yes,
it was very less.
Yeah. Yes, sir. We started with less, but I feel that somehow they all have joined. 5-7 minutes ke gap mein they have joined.
So there is one question: how long it will be taken? Important question, because if somebody has a VT, and then it has to be taken indefinitely, or till some more definitive therapy like catheter ablation is done. But even after catheter ablation, it is given. So more or less, it needs to be taken indefinitely and lifelong in majority of the cases. Ideal dose. So dose is start with 200 mg TID. I know the problem in India because all these companies, they come with 150 mg, but the dose is 200 mg TID, and it can be increased. Excuse me. To 400 mg TID.
I feel these were the two questions which is being asked with us, sir. So, yeah, if you permit me, sir, can I conclude this session, sir?
Sure.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Jinnah, for joining with us today. It was really an insightful discussion for us as well as for our listeners. I would also like to thank all the doctors for being with us and for their active participation during the session. Thank you, everyone, and have a good day. Thank you, Dr. Jinnah, for joining us today, sir.
Good night. Thanks.
Good night, sir. Thank you so much, sir.